Good evening. Welcome. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Thank you so much to everyone for being here tonight. Just a few housekeeping rules. We do have Foothill TV is here. Thank you so much for being here, Justin. So this event is being filmed, recorded. Oh, thank you, Kathy. Is being recorded and will be available on YouTube on both their channels as well as the League of Women Voters of El Dorado County's channels. If you have questions, please raise your hand. We have League volunteers that will hand you an index card along with a pencil so you can fill out your questions. And just a bit about how we deal with questions. As you can see, we have more questions than we could possibly answer in the length of this forum. So we do reserve the right to combine like questions and try to prioritize topics. I also will be listening to our candidates' responses, and if I feel they've covered the topic, we may move on. So don't think that your question is not being answered. If you don't feel it was answered completely, please raise your hand and you can try asking it in a different way on our index card. So with that, I'll introduce myself. My name is Elizabeth Leslie Gassaway. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of El Dorado County. I've lived in El Dorado Hills for 8 years now, so I'm really excited to be able to do a neighborhood forum here. As most of you probably know, I see some familiar faces. The League is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. We've been around since 1920, and we started by helping women win the right to vote. So here we are 105 years later, still providing nonpartisan voter education to communities across California. We have about 68 local leagues that serve California, and in our state league, the League of Women Voters of California. There's lots of great nonpartisan election information out there for you. You can see on our table, we have something called the Easy Voter Guide. It is a very simple way to understand Prop 50, as well as to understand how you can vote in this election. Every registered voter in California will receive a mail-in ballot. It does not require postage. You can put it in a ballot box, you can mail it, or you can vote in person. You have those options. If you have questions about your election information, feel free to contact our elections office. They're very friendly and they will help you through the process if you need to re-register to vote, for example. Speaking of registering to vote, we have same-day voter registration here in California, so you can register to vote now, all the way up to Election Day, you can register to vote. I'd also encourage you to talk to the young people in your life. You can pre-register to vote at age 16, and then you automatically receive a postcard in the mail at age 18, letting you know that you are qualified to vote. So with that, I'd like to say thank you so much to the CSD, especially to Stephanie, who's here, and to Tally Ram, who helped organize this event and let us be here in the community tonight. So with that, I'd like to introduce our two candidates. We have Wayne Lowery here and Gary Kinghorn. The way we're going to start the forum is we use a 2-2-2 format, which means that our candidates have 2 minutes to provide an opening statement, 2 minutes to answer the questions, and 2 minutes for a closing statement. Both candidates have also agreed to talk to any voter after this forum if you feel that you haven't had your question answered or if we do run out of time. So with that, we're going to start in alphabetical order. So Gary, we are going to start with you with your opening statement. You will have 2 minutes and you can watch our timers here. Please go ahead with your opening statement.
Great, thank you. And thank you for everybody coming out tonight. I am really excited about this opportunity to run for the CSD board. Thank you, Chuck King, wherever you are tonight. I have been a 10-year resident here in El Dorado Hills. The kids have gone through a lot of the facilities here, but I really got involved as part of the grand jury, which I was the foreman of for the last 2 years, and got intimately involved in some of the issues in investigating the Kevin Lowen situation with the district attorney's office, and really got a sense that there was some frustration and division within the community, and it was not good. There's so much opportunity here for the CSD to be great and to deliver great services for El Dorado Hills and make this a very attractive environment, but certainly weren't hitting on all cylinders. So I'm a bit of an outsider, having only been here for 10 years. So I wouldn't be doing this without a great deal of support from the people that feel frustrated, some of the communities that have been concerned about their assessments and some of the other frustrations they've had with CSD. And I think they see me as a bit of a change agent, somebody that's got the skills and the energy and the drive to look into the details and to be that mediating person to address some of the issues and rebuild the trust back into CSD that I think would help us to move forward. And I think part of that is overcoming some of the lawsuits that have been they've been involved in for the last couple of years, including rebuilding relationships with the county and the affected subdivisions that have had the concerns. But there's a lot of opportunity here, and I'm really looking forward to helping out here at CSD.
Thank you. Wayne, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you. Quick warning, yesterday I was having lunch with my 4-year-old grandson, and he wanted to know what a cranium was. So I was explaining how the brain fits in there and everything, and he looked at me and he goes, well, then you don't have a brain. I go, why is that? You have no hair. So with that, be forewarned. Cynthia, my wife, and I moved here in 1986 with our 2 kids. Cynthia was a teacher at the schools, 36 years with the Buckeye School District. Our 2 kids grew up here, went to school here, went away for college, came back to the house, unfortunately. And one of them had 2 kids, so I got 2 grandkids that live within 10 minutes away. At the time we moved here, the population was around 6,000. And we're 50,000 people right now. And the reason we're 50,000 people is because people found out that this is a great place to live. Great schools, great parks, wonderful recreation programs, and I'm very proud of that. Velma Gamble's the general manager that I replaced when I moved here, is in here tonight, and I thank you, Velma, for coming. She and Bill McKay before her did an excellent job of getting this district in shape. I feel I took it to the next stage because development started going crazy about 1988 when Stonegate was put in. And at the time I came here, I believe there were 6 parks. When I left, we had 25. So we built 19 parks in the 20 years I worked for the CSD. After I retired from the CSD, I did 2 terms on the board of directors here. So I'm familiar with it. I think I've got the experience to understand the community and understand how special districts operate. I've worked in 4 special districts, general manager of 3 of them, and I worked for the city of Mission Viejo when it became a new city in 1988. So with that, I'll let the questions start.
Thank you. And Wayne, you'll be answering the first question, so let's jump right in. What is the biggest issue facing the CSD today that you would address immediately if elected?
I think the biggest issue is public confidence. And I know the board is already working hard to get trust back, but I see being visible and being out in the community and having opportunities like the one we have tonight where people can come and ask questions and understand what's going on is absolutely key. The board's role is policy governance, oversight, accountability, and transparency. And if they follow all those things, everything else falls into place. I think probably the biggest issue is the financial, and the 2 biggest issues that most districts, all districts should face. One is managing the budget to make sure the district stays financially viable, and staff. Staff is absolutely key. And you pay them well, and you attract new people, and you retain the people you've got, which we did a very good job of. I was very proud of the staff we had when I was working here, and our retention level was extremely high. We've seldom lost somebody unless it was to another job somewhere and it was a promotional opportunity for them. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Gary.
Yeah, I think the most important issue is I don't see how you can really make good decisions or move forward without a master plan or a vision. And I think that staff agrees with me on this a little bit. They're trying to put together a master plan, but without knowing what your future revenue situation looks like and what the priorities are for building out parks, it's hard to make good decisions. And so I think that's a fundamental thing that needs to be put in place. Every large organization, every company I've ever worked for, you've got to have people operating according to a plan that makes sound fiscal sense, that incorporates the priorities of whoever you're trying to serve, and we've been missing that. The master plan that was put in place in 2021 is really no longer realistic and only of marginal use. So you get decisions now that are based on personal preferences and may not have good, sound, long-term judgment behind some of the decisions that are being made. So I think that has to be fixed. I agree with Wayne that the staff is very good and seemingly very, very motivated, but I think that there's some corrections we need to figure out what to do with the GM and assistant GM position going forward. Congratulations to Stephanie for being the interim GM, but I think we need to take a look at that along with how this master plan fits in and what our financial situation is going forward so that we can spend the public's taxes in the most efficient way possible. And then rebuilding public trust is certainly an important part of it, but I think a big part of that is overcoming all of the lawsuits and the antagonistic environment, adversarial environment that has been built up with the community. That has to be resolved and relieved.
Thank you. And I am getting some feedback from the audience. They can't hear you both. So if I could ask you to, when speaking, speak a little closer to the mic and maybe a little bit louder. That'll work for people in the back? Okay, great. All right, and to be fair, we're going to alternate between who's answering questions first. So Gary, you're up for question 2. Please define your role as a CSD public fiduciary.
Well, I absolutely believe that we have to do a good job of spending the taxpayers' money in the most efficient way. I don't think it's fair that we've been paying off a lot of these legal fees, and we should be taking the public's money and building parks, developing assets, providing resources and programs for the constituents. When you've got legal bills that are running $1 million a year, when you're suing the county and going to court, that's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars probably when all is said and done. That's not a good fiduciary position to be in. So I think we need a different approach to prioritizing what we're spending money on, making sure it's in the public's best interest, and developing the parks and programs that have been committed to and prioritized. And I think that I've got a strong financial background to do that. I actually had 2 years where I was a financial advisor at Smith Barney as part of a long Silicon Valley management career. But then I still have as part of the grand jury, I was always diving into the financials of organizations and understanding where things were going wrong, where things didn't make sense, and that was my main view into the organization. And I think that that includes the investigation that we did here, and in fact, it was the grand jury and probably myself driving it mostly that led to the audit that's currently being undergone, the forensic audit that's being undertaken that we should get the results back for next month. So that's a big part of it. I think it's all about spending the public's money wisely on their priorities.
Thank you. Wayne.
I would agree. As I said earlier, budget is probably the most critical thing in terms of managing an agency, and you've got to have the staff and your finance director just totally focused on that. Without good management of the budget, you can't hire good staff. You can't keep staff. I mean, we almost had layoffs twice while I was here because the budget got so tight. The first time was mid-90s when we built this park in 88, 89, and the park was awesome. It didn't have a swimming pool. That came in 92. But by 95, we found we didn't have enough money to maintain the park. And I was actually spending hours trying to figure out how can we do this without laying anybody off. That's what triggered us going and finding assessment districts, landscape and lighting assessment districts, as a way of building parks and having a means to maintain them. If we didn't have the assessment districts in place, we wouldn't have been able to build the parks because we couldn't take care of them afterwards. So that's absolutely critical. That was followed by park impact fees, which gave us the money through developers to be able to afford to build the parks. And the Quimby Act, if if you're familiar with that, requires developers to provide 5 acres per 1,000 people that are moving into a community, was the way we acquired most of our properties. So that was the primary thing there. I would spend a great deal of time with staff, with Terry Gautreaux, their finance director, trying to figure out where have we made mistakes, where can we can move money around to reprioritize, and that would be, of course, with the board's blessing. You need 3 people to agree to do that, but I've got some catching up to do. I haven't managed the budget here for 15 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Wayne, you'll start first with this next question. What do you think is a fair way to fund our parks in the future?
I think the system we set in place worked. There were some changes when we first started. The first assessment district was Stonegate, and it was just for street landscape at their entrance and along Silva Valley, and they paid 100%. Later, there was a court case that said you really need to consider the fact that the general public is using local parks too, and come up with a formula so that people that live around a park that are in the assessment district aren't paying that full amount, which we did, and we varied it. If it was a community park, the general fund paid more of that than the local neighbors did. If it was a neighborhood park, then the general fund paid less, and we got more from that assessment. And we set up shell districts because at the time we weren't sure, assessment districts I should say, at the time we weren't sure that some of these HOAs were going to survive. Serrano was a key one where the HOA was going to take over the landscape that Parker Development put in, and if they failed, who was going to take care of that thing? Because Parker Development at some point would be gone. And so we put a shell assessment district in place, which only required that we hold public hearings, we notify the property owners, and they have a chance to protest. And if you get 50% protest, then the assessment district couldn't go forward. But when you have a developer that owns on the line, you only have one owner, so it was a very easy process to do. Later, we set up assessment district proactively afterwards, where we actually had to do votes and so forth. And Prop 218 came along, which wasn't there in the original period, which required that we have property owners vote, legally vote, and that vote counted. It wasn't no longer a 50% protest process. So I think it's important that we keep those elements in place or we'll be in trouble.
Thank you. Gary.
Yeah, I agree with Wayne that the mechanisms are in place. You've got the different options of LLADs for park maintenance. You've got developer impact fees or park impact fees that are paid that should be developing the new assets. And you've got Mello-Roos opportunity. There's new, fairly new Mello-Roos CFD funds that are funding, Bass Lake and can fund other parks and maybe take over some of the LLADs. But the problem has been the devil is always in the details, and these things are difficult to change once they're set up, but they still need to be revisited and make sure that the community is buying in to the assessments that are being made and the costs that they're paying for, and that they're paying for things that they're really using. And that's where you've got to make sure that these things get re-engineered properly, that there's communication with the public to make sure that they've got buy-in for the maintenance of things that they're using, and that you've built the things that they want to use. I think it was a huge mistake to let Parker off the hook for the cost of developing Bass Lake, and I think everybody is on the same page that that wasn't a great decision, but at the time it looked maybe that made sense. So the developer should be contributing to, their share of building out the community when they build out the homes. CSD primarily is funding the maintenance and making sure that the community buys in and they're assessing the right people. I have looked deeply into the whole engineering and assessment engineering process, and it's a mess. That's not largely the CSD's fault, it's largely the state's fault, but it's a very tricky problem that I'm not sure we've completely sorted out yet.
Thank you. Okay, and Gary, you'll start with this question first. Yep. What specific experience do you have that meets the need for Parks and Rec here in our community? Experience
is a funny thing, I think. Joe Biden had a lot of experience when he took his first term as president. I've got experience in building teams, figuring out problems with startup companies in Silicon Valley, building products that address market needs, and figuring out new technologies and how they're going to reach market. The experience I've got is how to run this as a business that meets the needs of the customers and the public. It doesn't take, there's great staff here that knows the details of, when to fertilize the grass and how to take care of the pools and things like that. So you have to make sure that the communication is good with the public, that they've got the buy-in, that you're operating efficiently, and I think I bring a lot of experience to that. I think I can improve the trust that the community will have into CSD and how decisions are being made, and alleviate some of the frustration that's been dealt with in the last few years. So I would say the experience comes from solving hard problems, attention to detail, and whatever topic or domain of expertise. I'm used to becoming the expert. I've already helped, as part of the grand jury, the airport operations. I've looked at EID financials and got them to recognize some things that they didn't understand, and now turning their environment around. We looked at a lot of topics that I had no prior experience in and made strong recommendations about how to improve those organizations throughout El Dorado County so far, and I think I can continue to do that here with the trust of the community.
Thank you. Wayne.
Absolutely. I've got 50 years experience in the park and recreation field. Both my bachelor's and my master's degrees were in the park and recreation field. And I started out working for the National Recreation Park Association, which was a national or a nonprofit organization. Moved back to California, where I grew up locally here in Rancho Cordova, back when population there was probably 100. In 1979, a proposition called 13 was passed, and I was in charge of the recreation department for Fair Oaks, and we laid off everybody in that department and closed down. And the board at that time looked at me and said, "You got a year to figure out what to do. You got till 79." I challenged myself by getting married 5, 6, 7 days after I lost my job with Fair Oaks. And anyway, I formed a company called Leisure Pro Inc., and we started contracting with Fair Oaks, and it caught on. We had contracts in San Diego. We had contracts up on the Klamath River. We were statewide, and the National Park Service was even asking us to come and speak at conferences and stuff about how we did it. But I learned how to run a small business. Since then, like I've said earlier, I've worked for a number of park and recreation agencies, all of them very, very successfully done, but I learned during that time. Coming to the board, I will come in with experience to bring to the board. The boards tend to have people in the community that bring different attributes, and very seldom is it somebody that has the kind of experience that I've got. And I think right now the district needs somebody that can support Stephanie and the staff and get us kind of straightened out.
Thank you. Okay, Wayne, you'll address this question first. Our community is being torn apart with controversies and conspiracies. How would you repair things and get us back on track?
That may be the toughest thing about what the district is facing. There's a book out called Performative Outrage that somebody slipped me a couple weeks ago, and I've been reading it, and it talks about how social media and so forth tends to set people up to be able to attack an agency with information, misinformation, information that's not totally false but not totally true. And then people come on social media, read it, and tend to believe it. It's on the internet, it must be true, right? And the district gets sidetracked by having that kind of social media pressure being put on them when they're trying to do their job, and they spend a lot of time dealing with those performance issues and not getting problems solved, and spend literally tens of thousands of dollars responding to issues that through Public Record Act and so forth, and staff time that takes them away from doing their job. And the only thing I can think is you got to ignore it and focus on what your priorities are. And I can't think of a better way to do it. I've never had to do it before. Social media wasn't what it was back when I was working. So that would be my biggest concern.
Thank you. Gary.
Yeah, I hate to characterize them as conspiracy theories because, you know, there are some real clear issues, and I think you have to drill down into the facts. And I'm the first one to tell the district's resident conspiracy theorist when, you know, he's not making sense, and, you know, we need to look at the facts and prioritize what problems we need to address. So, but, you know, you've got to recognize that there are things that need to be dealt with. And, you know, I bring this engineering mentality where you drill down into the facts, you figure out what's real, you get to the truth, and then you resolve the problem. And I think Wayne's kind of on that same page too from what I hear. But, you know, you need to, you know, start to build that trust with the community, because with no trust, then everything has to be researched, everything has to be double checked, everything becomes, you know, a conspiracy or threat. So, you know, rebuilding that trust and getting a fresh perspective onto the board that brings an outside view, that brings a different focus, that brings a slightly different skill set, is going to be key to that. And I think that I can be the best person to help rebuild that trust with the community and get down to the real problems and address them in priority order. And I think that the reason why that I've got the support from the community that I do is because they recognize that just based on the grand jury reports and other positions that I've taken, that it's been very respectful, it's been very fact-based, and it's been very solution-oriented, you know, without getting into the hyperbole and the rest of the animosity that has developed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Gary, you'll start on this next question. A regional center was promised as part of the Bass Lake Plan, but not built. What are your thoughts on the need for the amenities similar to the something CSD?
Okay. Yes, I've been a big proponent of development at Bass Lake. I think that the amenities that were promised were probably overblown and expensive. We don't need something quite like that, but we should definitely have something. I've been one of the people that have been disappointed that there's really nothing there that's been developed out. So I would say let's go back, and I recognize my opinion is only a certain amount of importance. It's really the community that should be weighing in on this, and I think that I would push to involve the community more in a lot more of these decisions and priorities. So having said that, I think that keeping it as a relative open space, nature preserve, fiscally responsible development, I mean, the original plan was for $90 million community center, which it just doesn't make sense anymore. So let's come back with a reasonable plan. I know that different subcommittees and groups have been looking at ways of keeping it very nature-oriented and conservancy, but yet accessible to the community with assets that make sense. So I would be all in favor of that. In fact, I would put that as one of the biggest priorities in the new master plan that we should be working on.
Thank you. Wayne.
Absolutely. The district wanted an outside financial organization, a 501c3 nonprofit, to be able to bring in donations and so forth. And the goal originally was the golf course, which had been closed, and the district had hoped to buy it and so forth. So we formed the Promise Foundation. The golf course thing just went on, but Bass Lake came about, 210 acres. With a lake on it and just in a really nice spot. And we got very excited about the idea of building that park. The design into an intensive area near the Serrano homes where we would have sports fields and play equipment. We've got Walk with Austin, the group that's trying to put in a playground for all abilities. and it addressed the need for more sports fields, which you need acres to be able to do that. I tend to agree with Gary. I wasn't too excited about the entertainment center or the convention center that they were talking about, but I was excited about the nature center, which had gone on the east side of the park, and the fact that of the 210 acres, about 80 acres would end up being a natural area. I kind of lean towards trying to find a new location for the intense recreation activity if we can, and making that thing just a nature park with trails, a place where the scouts can come for a weekend and learn how to tie knots and have a campfire and cook and do those kinds of things, and all the educational things. When I was at Fair Oaks, we rented day camp all summer long, where the kids spent from 7 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon learning how to canoe and cook and build fires and shoot archery and stay away from rattlesnakes. And I can totally see that happening at that park, but it's going to take some work, and we need the community to be involved.
Yep.
Thank you. Wayne, what are your funding priorities, and how will you pay for them?
I'm a little concerned that the board move forward to put QRNS on the ballot. I'll be honest. I think when we set the assessment districts up, it was the purpose of making sure the parks were maintained at a quality level. If those assessments go away, we're going to have to look very hard at what we're operating. Our level of service will go down dramatically. The question is, do you reduce the level of service at those 3 parks? One of those parks is a community park that has sports fields on it and all kinds of high-use items. Do you start cutting recreation programs? You cut your support for the sports leagues and so forth. What about the senior center? The district, I noticed recently, talked about buying the senior center from the county because the county moved their senior daycare program out and are not using it anymore. There's all these things to look at, but like Gary said, we need the community to give us input as to what their priorities are, and then we need to make the hard decisions as a board to decide how we're going to spend our money if our budget gets low. But that's my biggest worry, is where's the money going to come from and what are we going to spend it on?
Thank you. Gary.
Yeah, somewhat similar to what Wayne is saying. And I'm interpreting the question as what would you prioritize funding towards rather than where's funding coming from? And I think the QRS is a whole different topic. But I would certainly prioritize development at Bass Lake and get that commitment delivered on in whatever form. I would, and I still ask, what are we going to do about pickleball in north of 50? It's like when Folsom is basically, busy all the time. It's hard to get on there. Lifetime's converted from tennis to completely pickleball over in Folsom. Heritage has a couple of courts, but that's a long ways away from Serrano. So you can play here at the gym, I think, a couple of mornings a week if school's not out. But let's figure out what the community is really using and really wants and put it in. I don't think some of these things can be very, very cost effective, and that's where what we should be funding. But again, you can't make any of these decisions without a master plan, without a vision, without an understanding of, what revenue you're going to have in the future, what's going to be the outcome of the funding for ongoing park maintenance and the resolution of some of these issues that we're facing. So you're making these decisions in a vacuum. You may put yourself in more fiscal constraints going forward. So we need to understand those priorities, get them incorporated into a master plan, get the community's input, and then start develop it. And the other thing is, Wayne probably knows better than I do, but what was the population here in El Dorado Hills when we put the pool in? It's got to be 3 or 4 times what it is now. So we need another aquatic center and more resources as we build out. And so those would be my priorities, but it's got to come from the context of a master plan.
Thank you. Gary, you'll start with this question.
Yep.
What do you see as the biggest issues with the LLADs, and how would you propose to fix them?
we can't do this in 2 minutes, unfortunately. Yeah, the problem with the LLAD is, this is really a state mandated process. It doesn't fit, I think it fits well when you've got a median, that you're maintaining for $50,000 a year or something. It doesn't work well for a multi-million-dollar park or many multi-million-dollar parks, because the engineering methodology is putting the costs on the wrong people and generating a lot of the frustration that we've seen and that resulted in QRS. And part of that, the part that I would put on CSD that needs to change is there should have been more ongoing dialogue. There should have been, discussions about ways to fix the methodology that made sense for everybody, that could be bought into, and then we didn't have to go down this completely, nuclear option of, multiple court battles. So I would fix it by re-engineering through NBS, the engineering company, to re-engineer the LLEDs to the extent possible. Continue the dialogue with the communities and the subdivisions that have had the most problem in the past, that have had the most frustration. Make sure you've got some buy-in and negotiate something reasonable for that they buy into, and then move forward from there. And if it takes maybe removing certain LLADs and moving them into the district-wide CFD, if that's an option, we should look at that. So let's explore multiple options, continue the dialogue that never really happened with the subdivisions, and re-engineer it to the existing LLDs to the extent that you can and that makes sense, so that the community really buys into it and you don't have the animosity that's been built up and lack of trust.
Thank you. Wayne.
When I was on the board, we started realizing, well, when I was still working, we realized that the assessment districts were a little bit of a problem because they all had ceilings. And as costs go up over time, you pay staff more, the cost of maintenance and so forth, supplies goes up. You hit that ceiling, and then you're stuck. And we still have some assessment districts that have that problem. We'd have community meetings, we'd have dialogues, and try to get some buy-in to do that. And it never really gelled as well. Recently, the district has formed a landscape and lighting advisory committee, and they've gone in depth, and they've got some really intelligent people on that committee that have looked into some of the problems we've got and trying to look at issues and make recommendations to the board, and I'm so glad they're in place. One of the things the district has done since I was on the board was they've created and I'm not sure how big it is, but a community-wide community facilities district. We used to call it a Melrose. Nobody liked Melrose. Windsor Point was going to be a 9-acre park, and we put it to vote, but to buy it, we were going to have to do a Melrose. And people fought it, and it lost. And then the chairman of the group that opposing it called me the day after and said, so now we're going to do to protect that land. And I said, yeah, they're bringing bulldozers out tomorrow. I mean, we missed our opportunity, and that was it. But the CFD can be operated in a way that's similar to assessment district, gives more flexibility and is a way to generate M&O money, and you can also use it to build facilities. But you got to do it carefully, and you got to do it with the community, because you can't be putting more taxes on people without some buy-in. And frankly, at some point, we're going to have to look at a GO bond to build all the facilities we want, because we're not going to do it with just tax money.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay, Wayne, you'll start with the next question. How will you address the continuing lack of transparency at the CSD?
That's a tough one. There's a couple things. One is, I know Stephanie recently has been posting a lot of information. I mean, she was out there at the Oktoberfest last weekend, standing in front of different events and stuff, inviting people to come out. And I think social media is a tool that we need to use better to get the information out there. This program is going on YouTube, you mentioned. That's another way. We just need to get people aware of how they can get access to it. We need to have more public meetings, maybe some surveys. Surveys can be expensive if you do them right. But if they're important to do, then we should probably be doing that to get feedback from the community. And other than that, I remember we had a recall in 2004, or 1994, I'm sorry. And a new board came on. 3 new board members, and about 6 months into it, one of them got up sitting at this table and he said, I can't believe it. I ran on more community involvement, and I'm looking out there, and we've only got 2 people in the audience today. What's going on? And I said, Steve, I think the problem is you guys have built trust, and the community is comfortable letting you run the district without having to be down there and spending their evenings paying attention to you. But we didn't have Zoom back there. We've got all kinds of ways to get out in the public and get their information out there, and we just need to buy it.
Thank you. Gary.
I think community involvement is one of the things that we need more of. I would start out by having regular office hours of myself with the community, and we can go into more lengthy discussions about what's going on. I would probably look to deputize a number of people to be involved in reviewing board agenda packets before meetings and soliciting their opinions and involvement in reviewing decisions that are being made, kind of, opening up that dialogue, because I think the whole, board meeting format where you've got 3 minutes to talk and there's not the dialogue and back and forth that you need. We need to have the board more out and communicating with the public about the issues and in depth, soliciting their opinion. So I've been running weekly meetings for the last year and a half on Monday nights. We talk about the Constitution, we talk about what's going on at the state level, what's going on in the county, and getting people involved. I would leverage that and just convert that into getting the people that are frustrated with CSD or have concerns about issues or want to get more involved, come to that meeting. We'll talk about the CSD. We'll go through the documents. We'll go through the financials if it makes sense. We'll go through the re-engineering process if we're looking at LEDs. People will be more informed. I'm happy to spend the time doing that well outside of board meetings because I've got the time and the inclination to do it, and we're already getting people engaged in government operations at all levels through what I've already been doing. So that's where it would start.
Thank you. Okay, Gary, you're going to start with this one. With the recent purchase of the golf course property, what do you envision can be achieved for this property?
That is a good question. Again, I would say my opinion is only slightly relevant. I think we need to throw it back out to the community. We need to solicit their opinion. We need to bring a wealth of ideas and real costs and long-term viability, and then make the decision as a community. I don't have the information on that to say what would make sense. I think a golf course that's funded by CSD is very unlikely. Thinking completely out of the box, I know that people are paying $129 to go to the top of Heavenly Valley and ride a mountain coaster. So we've got a nice hillside here on the golf course property that, So I think, we need a thorough research what the possibilities are. I think it sounds like the public wants to keep it open space, that the primary objective was to make sure high-density housing didn't go in there. I think that we can include the concept of, Frisbee golf, trails, again, a nature facility, if it makes sense, to go that route. I would not expect there to be a heavy development there of some kind of conference center or whatever they originally envisioned for Bass Lake to go in there. I'm not sure we've got the funding and long-term funding mechanisms to do anything overly dramatic right at that golf course. But again, it needs to take community involvement and a thorough comparison of the different alternatives that might be possible.
Thank you. Wayne.
It's going to be an interesting process. Saturday at the Oktoberfest, or not the Summerfest, I circulated around and I passed out little flyers about myself and talked to people. And I got, on the golf course issue, I got extreme answers from, just leave it open space, plant some more trees out there, just keep it nice, trails, and that would just fine with me too. You really need a golf course. We need a golf course up here so bad. I want my kids to learn how to play golf, and I can't afford to do Serrano, and I'm not sure. My wife's family is a golf family, and I'm not a golfer. In fact, my father-in-law, 40 X years we've been married, 46, Cynthia. Never even offered to take me out there to do anything except maybe have a highball. So I can't speak to golf in the golf community that much. I think with Bass Lake Park, if that's going to be our priority, we'll probably have enough money to do that. I'm not sure we can also do the golf course. We may have to make a decision. But owning the land is always the important part. In fact, with the golf course, I told the board, I said, if you get the land and it takes us 100 years to put something on it, that's okay. If you don't get the land, there's going to be houses there and you're not going to get the land. So it's really important that we prioritize acquisition before we prioritize development, but we got to balance that. So yeah, I just don't know, but I agree with Gary. We need a process where the community tells us what they want, and I think we've got the staff and even some consultants locally that can help us with that process.
Thank you. Wayne, you'll start on this question first. When hiring a CSD general manager, what top qualities do you look for, given this has been problematic?
Well, as long as they're as good as me, they'll be fine. So, they've got to be articulate. They've got to have a reputation for handling finances appropriately. There are a number of people out there that have great staff currently that bolster them up, but the Peter principle, if you've heard of it, the administrator probably never should have been in that position. I know one administrator, I won't say his name, because you'd probably all recognize it. When he left one agency, I looked at it, I go, he did nothing. If everything that was accomplished was because he had great staff. Mm-hmm. He went on and just recently retired from a major city in Southern California, and I was going, how did that happen? He worked there for 9 years successfully. It had to be the staff. You've got to delve deep. You ask interview questions that are very specific, and you do reference checking. We lost a person here one time, and it became a big issue in the community. And his former boss called me after it was all over and said, why did you hire him in the first place? I was in the process of firing him when you hired him. And I go, well, why didn't you call me then and let me know? It's a process. But they've got the financial thing is key in their ability to communicate and to work with staff. If they can't work with staff, I don't want them here, because we got great staff and they've been very frustrated because of the situation going on. We need to change that.
Thank you. Gary.
Yeah, I think it starts with integrity, and then good communication and rebuilding that trust and communication pathways to the community. I think that the second most important skill would be project management. There's a lot of, things that need to be built, things that need to be kept track of, trade-offs need to be made, potentially with a lot of limited resources. Under time constraints, you have to have that attention to detail and ability to see these projects through and know how to manage them. And then you have to have the ability to work with outside agencies. I think we've not become good citizens within the county. We need to rebuild those relationships and be able to work with them a lot better. And so communication, transparency, integrity, and project management skills in some combination.
Thank you. What contributions or achievements have you made to El Dorado Hills that you are most proud of?
Well, I would say that specifically to El Dorado Hills and to the larger county, I was directly involved on the grand jury. We've started with getting the airport in Georgetown turned around from a very hazardous situation, showing them how to cut through red tape to keep the airport open. we did an extensive deep dive into the water district and why rates were going up so high and some of the lack of fiscal transparency that they had, and educated the populace about where those decisions were coming from and why the financials looked like they did and some of the long-term capital projects that they needed to build out. So, and then we did two deep dives into election integrity here, because that was a major concern of the people, and I think that working with the elections department opened a lot of people's eyes, and we got a lot of respect for the research that we did and improvements that we suggested, even though everything, while we alleviated the concerns that the public had. So I haven't been involved clearly in El Dorado Hills specifically to the extent Wayne has, but I've got the experience in dealing with a lot of these organizations that were completely new to me and adding real value into their decision-making process, their transparency, and in many cases into the fiscal issues that maybe they were facing that the public had concerns about.
Thank you. Wayne?
That's kind of an easy answer for me because I think about it all the time. I'm proud of the staff that we had because I was integral part of their hiring, but more important of the retention and the training we gave them and the efforts we made. We had a policy when we did salary surveys that when the survey came back, whatever the median was, we were going to be 10% higher because we wanted to attract the best staff in the area. And we did that for a long time. We did training programs all the time. We sent maintenance management schools and so forth. The park system, which I mentioned earlier, we went from 6 parks to 25 parks. We built 19 parks in just that 20 years that I was sitting here. The budget was always balanced. Our finance staff received awards for their ability to maintain records and keep things in place. Recreation, when I started, we had a budget of $700,000. By the time I left, it was multi-millions. Recreation went from, we increased participation by 1,000%. It amazed me when we started doing the summer concerts. We had 240 people, I think, at the first concert. Stephanie can tell you, but we had at least 5,000 people show up last Saturday. And the thing that happened is about the 3rd year of doing concerts, our recreation revenues went up 20% because people started seeing the district and seeing it as more than just that building down there at the community park where we swim. And they love staff. And anytime the staff got in trouble around here, the community showed up to support them. We got a great community. I'm also proud of the fact that I've been very involved in other organizations, such I was president of the Chamber of Commerce at one time. I'm on the design review committee. Rotary, and I am the advisor to the Interact Club on Oak Ridge High School and a number of other things, and I love that involvement.
Thank you. Wayne, we'll start with you. Are you willing to serve as president to provide business acumen and leadership to the board?
I want to say no. Certainly. It's a responsibility. If you take on being a member of this board of directors, you got to be all in. And if the other board members feel that I can play a role in leadership, then absolutely I would do that.
Thank you. Gary?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do it. I'd like to build consensus, and I'd like to build a better rapport with the rest of the board. I think that the president's job has been very challenging for the CSD recently, and I hope we can overcome that, and hopefully I can be a part of that. But yeah, I'd be happy to serve as the president. I was the foreperson of the grand jury. I know how to run meetings. I know how to set agendas. I know how to build consensus and get teams, working. And whatever is needed, I've certainly got the time, energy, and drive to be the president if that's what it takes.
Thank you. Gary, you'll start with this question.
Yeah.
What is your position on cityhood?
Good question. I think this is three-part answer. I'm completely open to the idea. I will be the first to say that it would require a deep dive of research, and I think we need to, come up with an exact answer. And I think we need to wait for the, the financial viability study to come back and see that it really makes sense. And I look forward to diving into that now that we've committed to that process. If anything, I've been a little bit concerned about the transparency of the process, and again, the communication of the process to the community and the community's input into, their desire for cityhood and why it would make sense. The public presentations I've been to have been sometimes good, sometimes not so good, and that's been a little bit disappointing. In the back of my mind, my going-in position is that cities and more layers of government tend to build in long-term fiscal responsibility or funding requirements that may be hard to meet, and cities end up kicking the can down the road in ways that is not apparent in the first few years when it looks like everything makes great sense. So I would look to recent cities like from Rancho Cordova to Mountain House to Half Moon Bay, what the effect of cityhood was on them, and I want to understand that a lot better to make sure we can avoid the pitfalls and it makes sense for us. I saw just yesterday that Rancho Cordova has approved 5-0 a new city center with 600 units of high-density housing and an indoor arena for women's soccer league and 2 hotels. And if you need that kind of development and growth to fund your city going forward, including all the long-term pensions and everything that comes along with it, and police, it's you got to know what you're buying into long-term.
Thank you. Wayne.
I'd use Rush Limbaugh's comment, ditto. I think you're right on target. When I went to the city of Mission Viejo, they were a community services district that incorporated in March of 1988. And I was their first Parks and Recreation director. I had 270 acres of parks and 26 miles of street landscape. What I loved was that I had a finance director that ran the city and knew finance in depth. We had a planning director. I had an engineer, public works, all these resources that I didn't have to manage. But when I had a problem, I could go do it. So I enjoyed the city. When they started to incorporate in 2004, I had a 5-0 board that was supportive of incorporation. So of course I was in favor of a city. But I really questioned whether it was a great idea. And like Gary said, the finance is going to be there. And they did a comprehensive fiscal analysis, said that it could. Where they ran into trouble was the developers were uncomfortable that they were going to lose the. A city has to be carefully thought out, and you have to have a vision. And the city council with the community sets that vision. I don't see us being a Folsom or a Rancho Cordova or an Elk Grove and the need for development. Our funding source is the fact that we have very high quality housing here, and they are taxed to the brink. Every time a house sells, the CSD's budget goes bump up a little bit because the house goes. I paid $280,000 for my house, and Zillow tells me it's worth $1 million now. If I sell it, that completely changes the tax structure for that house. I support cityhood, and I am on the incorporation committee that is supporting the district with the process. LAFCO met today, and they approved the CFA consultant, and I think the CSD is going to have the EEI consultant on board pretty soon.
Thank you. Okay, Wayne, you'll start with this question. It's a 2-part question. What is your position on recall elections? And do you support spending taxpayers' money on recall elections?
Like I mentioned, we had a recall in 1994, and it was needed. I think recall elections can be important, but the community has to go through the process with legitimate information, and it's become more complicated because social media didn't exist in 1994. So people had to come to meetings, they had to talk to people, they had to find out the facts. And now it's easy to get misconstrued with conspiracy theories and so forth. But if a recall process goes through and it's legitimate, then absolutely the district should be paying for it.
Thank you. Gary?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate when the district has to pay for a recall election, but sometimes it may be necessary. Right now there's not any recalls on the table, and hopefully there won't be for many years going forward. But, we were involved in the recall, the most recent recall effort, and we more or less backed off on that when we found out that we wouldn't make this special election in November, and that another election would be required, and we didn't really want to have the district pay for that because, it didn't make sense. So I think that, the decisions that are made by the board could impact millions or tens of millions of dollars. And if a special election costs $75,000 and you've got, a really good reason, maybe it might come to that. We haven't seen that in the most recent case, but, sometimes it may be necessary. You have to evaluate that position at the time of the recall.
Thank you. And as we've approached an hour, that's all the time we have for questions. We got through almost all of them. So please stay after if you'd like to speak with the candidates directly. Now we're going to move on to our closing statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes, and we will start this time with Wayne. You have 2 minutes. Please go ahead.
As I said, probably repeatedly, maybe too many times, I've got a great deal of experience I can bring to the table. Boards are made up of people from the community who bring a variety of experiences. If you didn't need 5 board members, 1 board member could make all the decisions and do it well, that would be fine. But you get 5 in there because you get different opinions, and you start getting compromised, and you start finding solutions to things that maybe wouldn't have been thought of with a smaller board. And most board members don't have operational experience, and that's what I bring to the table, and I think that the district's in a position that they need that right now. I want to see happy staff. I want to see staff that are productive, that they're serving the community as they should. They have service hearts. I think that I think, as I said in the very beginning, the board needs to focus on policy, governance, oversight, and financial, have their financial acumen to make sure that, as Gary said, that we're spending money appropriately and we're getting things done that need to get done. So thank you, League, for doing this today and for my opportunities to talk.
Thank you, Wayne. Gary, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Yeah, so I really look forward to the opportunity. I think most of the boards that I've been involved with or served under, you need different perspectives for sure. You need a fresh outside perspective. Wayne has all the experience in the world, it's true, but I think that he's going to be more of a status quo for what's been going on at CSD. I think I bring the fresh perspective. I bring a different skill set in terms of drilling down into the issues and wanting to build the relationship with the community again, rebuilding that trust, having outside meetings, doing more videos and communication, like I've done about Bass Lake and about the LLAD assessment issues that many people have seen on YouTube. Continue to do that. I really, really want to support staff as well. I think I can offer a lot of operational efficiency. Not only from an IT perspective, but from a communication and finance perspective. I think the staff is great. I think there might be some open recs that should be filled to become completely efficient, but I would be happy to spend all the time, whether it's making more communication, social media posts, videos, in engaging the community, whatever makes sense, so that we can get this plan in place, get the community to buy into the plans, get the communities to buy into the assessments that are being engineered, and everybody feeling good about the prospects for El Dorado Hills, and make this a more prosperous and attractive destination for home buyers and people visiting the community.
Thank you so much. So with that, that concludes our candidates forum for this evening. Again, you can find this on Foothill TV's YouTube channel and or social media channels, as well as the League of Women Voters of El Dorado County's Facebook page and YouTube channel as well. Again, a warm thank you to the CSD for having us here tonight. We really appreciate your support of us being in community, and to all the attendees here tonight, thank you for your great questions. We really appreciate your participation, and don't forget to vote on November 4th. Thank you.
Wayne, very good job.